Hi there, welcome to my first ever city tour. So this map includes an international style city built on a lake, surrounded by typically British rural villages. It also features some smaller lakeside towns like those you might see in the UK, and even a couple of fantastical Miami style resorts which, to be honest, you wouldn't see in the UK, but I just enjoy doing them. Now this is very much a work in progress, as you'll see. As I said, it's my first tour, and actually it's my first ever proper YouTube video, so please bear with me. I've loved building this city to the point that it's at now, even though it has been constrained a bit by mods that don't work anymore, but I try my best. So, let's get started, and I'll go into play mode and let's have a look around. Right, we're going to start in this area, the old docks. This area is called Oldharbour. And it feels appropriate to start here because the name of the city, Lake Goodluck, was actually inspired by an area of London's docklands called Goodluck Hope, which back in the day, in its prime, might have looked similar to this with the warehouses and the cranes and so on. Now in my city, this dock isn't in use as a dock anymore, but it is in use by other industries. So it's now used by creative industries like film production houses and design studios and so on. So it's nice to think that these beautiful old buildings are still in use. This asset, by the way, is called New England Dock House by Darth. It's not exactly the same kind of style as you would have seen in London, but it's very, very similar. So I think it works quite well in the setting. Also in the old dock you get rich people's yachts being moored for a while they come to visit. Now behind the yachts is a more derelict part of the old dock. As you can see, there's an excavator there just working on clearing the site, so I'm imagining that perhaps this might be earmarked for development into new dockside flats or something like that. Now if we zoom out slightly and we look at the hill behind, you can see we've got these terraced rows of houses, so let's go and have a quick look at those. Zoom in again. Now this kind of housing would have been built in the late 19th century, and this would have been to house the people that actually worked down in the docks. As we travel up the hill a little bit further, we can see that there's these larger houses, so these would have been owned and occupied by perhaps merchants or managers of the docks. And nowadays they'd be broken up mostly into flats, which would be occupied by maybe young professionals, that kind of thing. So, going back down the hill again, let's go to look at the warehouse district, which is just over to the side of the old docks. Ooh. Here it is. So for the warehouse district, I've used Brooklyn assets, which are actually quite similar in style to the kind of old warehouses you would have got in London, which have now been converted into, those that remain anyway, have been converted into flats as well. So that's what's happened here. So these are all flats now. Although they're not exactly the same as the ones you would see in London, they've got the same kind of feel, so I think that district works nicely. And then just around the corner from the old warehouse district, we've got a working port, and you can see the old docks there back in the background. This is obviously just the vanilla small port asset. But when I placed it, I didn't do any terraforming to start with, so I just decided to work with the environment that was already there. So that's why I've used these tiered quays to create this kind of stepped effect coming down to the dockside. And then these stairs come down to this older yard down here, which is just used for a bit of storage now / dumping stuff. As you can see, it's still a working port, which is cool. I really like this old warehouse asset here, which I feel really fits in with this environment nicely. It just looks quite like it's meant to be here. So just slightly up the hill from the dock, we've got a freight rail service, a freight rail terminal. This is a custom freight rail terminal. It's a lovely asset. When trains come in and vans come out, it's far more realistic than the vanilla asset, I personally think. Just to say about the roads and rail actually in this game, so in this particular city, I've mostly used vanilla road and rail, but please don't let that put you off. I've still used a few custom roads like this one, for example. But overall, I'm just trying to keep the number of assets to a manageable level for this city so that as it grows, it's still nice and smooth and playable. At the present time, it's around 134,000 people, so it's not huge. But I plan to keep on building it and developing it and so on. Also, just a word about my setup as well. So I'm playing on a MacBook Pro with an M1 Pro chip. I only use the MacBook Pro when I play, so I don't have any external screens, and I don't have any external input devices like a mouse or whatever. So this is purely played on the device itself. As you can see, it mostly runs pretty nicely, even at high resolution and high detail, which is pretty remarkable really, because the game wasn't designed for Apple Silicon, and the Apple Silicon chip is actually having to convert all the code on the fly into a form it can understand. As a Mac user, as you can imagine, I'm pretty gutted that City Skylines 2 won't initially be around on the Mac. I just really hope they bring it out in the next few months, or certainly within a year, hopefully, fingers crossed, if they decide to bring it out at all. Because I think that an M1 native version of the game would just be absolutely superb, just run really, really buttery smooth. So yeah, here's hoping. Right, okay, so that's the Oldharbour area. I'm just going to zoom out. I'm going to zoom across now to the opposite side of the city to look at a completely different area, which is called Jackson Park. Right across the city to Jackson Park, which is over here. Now, Jackson Park is intended to be a really kind of typical small British town. If we look at these buildings here, now these are great. I mean, I love these assets. They're really realistic for a small English town. Although, unfortunately, not all of the props seem to have loaded, so there's some missing fences and stuff. So I have to kind of imagine there's fences around there. I suppose I could add in a load manually, but I haven't done it yet, as you can see. These props, however, have loaded in, so that's the kind of fence that you would expect to see. And these gardens are like quite realistic as well for these kind of properties, so they're really nice. Also, in these small English towns, you will get kind of low-rise apartment blocks like these. Maybe not as nice as these, but a lot of these kind of lines. And you get a high street with typically British shops like this one here, which is a betting shop, Coral. Got Nando's, which is a South African restaurant, very, very popular. Got a big club here, which lots of smaller English towns would have. Nightclub, I mean. And some smaller shops as well. As you can see, there's a tram line that runs through this area. Now, this tram is super detailed. It's really, really nice. I really like that. What else is there to say about this area? Oh yes, okay, if we go a bit further out of the small town bit, over here we've got a retail park. Now, if I zoom out, I imagine this would be the old rail yard, so you would have had like sidings for the railway here back in the day. But now it's been converted, the whole land has been converted into a retail park with popular retailers like TK Maxx. I think it's called TJ Maxx in America, that one. Argos, which is like a sort of British version of Amazon, although a lot older than Amazon. And you've got Next, which is a clothing retailer, same with Matalan. B&Q is a DIY shop. Boots is a big chemist. Which, it's the same company as Walgreens, it's a UK outlet of that. Got Homebase over there, another DIY place, Halfords for cars. And we've got a McDonald's, of course. So who wouldn't want a McDonald's in their retail park? So yeah, I mean, I kind of really like this because it's super realistic for a smaller English town. You get these on the outskirts of so many English towns. Also, this town is lucky enough to have a multiplex cinema, which is just here. And it's got a Waitrose as well, which is a fancy upscale supermarket in the UK. So the residents of this town are really well served. Now, there's also a BP garage over here as well. And weirdly, the price of the fuel is actually very accurate to what the price of fuel is today. So, now, just going a bit further along, this is a typical UK light industrial area. So you've got these kind of tin shed buildings, which you see a lot of in UK light industry, and some real life names like Plum Centre, and we saw Juicing as well a minute ago. Now these are all, I guess, smaller companies. I don't know who they are, but you get the idea. And if we go a bit further along here, we'll see there's a very well-known UK company here called Travis Perkins. They do like hire of tools and stuff like that. Anyway, I really love these assets because it just makes this area feel very, very much like a real UK small industrial area. I think if we zoom right in, get right into the weeds, then this does feel like the kind of place you'd see, although you wouldn't see an oil truck doing that manoeuvre there. That's a bit unrealistic, but you know, that's a game. So okay, so zooming out from that, oh yeah, there's one other thing I like about this area, which is it's got its own this town's got its own small football stadium. Now this would be like a non-league stadium. So if you're familiar with Wrexham, they recently played in the non-league in the UK. They're a bigger club in the non-league, but like you get a lot of smaller clubs which would have a stadium kind of similar to this. And next to the stadium, we've got this fire station. Now I love this fire station. It's really super realistic for the kind of fire station you get in UK suburbs and towns. So that's great. Love it. Right, what should we do next? We're quite near to the airport here, so let's zoom out a little and follow this road over here. Now, next to the airport, I've put this prison. Now, it's just a vanilla prison, but I've just done a few additions to it. So, for example, it's got this maximum security entrance here. It's not maximum security right now because it's open. Obviously, you could just walk in, but I imagine you'd have like an armed guard in this hut here, and it's got this police vehicle, this police Range Rover. Now the prison walls, they look pretty cool, right? So these prison walls are actually medieval walls, but I thought they look quite prison-y, if you see closer up. Like they're really tall, and inside we've also got razor wire fence as well. And then as we get a bit closer to the prison, we've got some facilities for the prisoners who are on less high security. They can come out here and they can play basketball and like chill and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the prison area, prison compound. If we go across here, we can see it's just the vanilla international airport, but I've just tried to make the area feel a bit more airporty with some kind of like small offices. Here's the airport Parkway station. Lots of parking for the airport as well. As you can see, it's quite fairly well utilised. And it's got an airport express which runs into this station, and then they can get a metro shuttle which goes directly into the airport terminal. So there's actually two airports in this city. There's this one and the Metropolitan Airport as well. So I'll just zoom to now. And between the two airports, oh yeah, we've got a DHL distribution centre down here as well. Now I won't zoom in too much because the model's quite basic on this one, but it's quite cool as well from a distance, so quite like that. Yeah, between the two airports anyway, as I was saying, we have a rotocopter service. I think it's called a rotocopter. So this kind of helicopter here, Now, these kind of helicopters, if you've ever seen one in real life, they are so noisy. I remember when President Trump, I think it was, came to visit the UK, there were quite a few of these rotocopters over London, and just the sound they produce is just amazing. It makes everything shake. It's like thud, 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 thud. So I thought it was quite cool that I've got a line between the two airports, so people who are doing layovers, maybe getting a flight from the other airport, can use that service. So let's just go to the other airport. There it is. Now this one's built, as you can see, right on the intersection of two highways, which is quite cool. So it's very accessible. There's this tunnel that goes around here and brings people right out of the airport. And the station is a bit closer to the airport building in this city. And there's also an international coach station down here, which is actually pretty popular. As you can see, people are always going to it. Oh, there's another rotocopter there just setting off. So yeah, this is just another vanilla airport, but I do like the assets that you can get, the plane assets. So here we've got a Norwegian A321 maybe. I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not an airport, an airline buff, so I don't really know. I know it's Norwegian, obviously. We'll see what else comes in, because you usually get a few BA planes and a few American Airlines planes as well. Now then, as I said, this is on right next to it. Oh, there's one. It's a BA plane. It's just come in. It's quite a nice model, that one. Now, as I said, this is on motorway intersection, or just around the corner from the motorway intersection, like so. Now, speaking of motorways, I've built a service station which is kind of typical of the service stations you get in the UK. And I'll just show you that. It's over here. It's called Twyford Services. There it is. So again, it's on an intersection of two big motorways. People can just come off here, go around this roundabout, and they're into Twyford Services. I'll get really close on this one. Now this has got an Audi, some trolleys over there, as you can see. So people who are on the road might fancy just getting some stuff from Audi. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any assets for a typical UK service station where you would have like restaurants and, well, I say restaurants, like fast food joints and stuff. But it goes well with this BP garage here. As you can see, there's quite a few cars taking advantage of that, including, weirdly, an electric VW just there. So I'm not quite sure why that would need to fill up, because it's an electric vehicle, but, you know, whatever. Maybe it just likes the smell of gas or something. And then we've got another McDonald's, of course, for this service station. And in these service stations, you often get a lot of long-distance haulage drivers who park up and get some food and have a rest and so on. So there's a haulage park here as well. So yeah, I quite like this. It's it's quite simple and basic, but it's quite realistic as well. Apart from the lack of like a big building full of other fast food joints, but still, overall, I think it works quite well. Now then, a short distance from the service station, which I've just shown you, is the village of Twyford, which gives the service station its name. Now, this is Twyford here. It's a really sort of old-fashioned, cute British village, made of honey-coloured stone, lots of kind of similar houses, dry stone walls, that kind of thing. So some great assets here as well, but these are all a bit samey. But if we go to the high street, you can see some lovely kind of British pubs, like got a Cavendish there. Oops, get away with that tree. We've got, what's this one? The Stag and Pheasant. Got the Squirrel over here. So on a Sunday, these would be teeming with people having Sunday roasts, which I think is a really nice little village. And we've got some kind of farm-style buildings as well, which are lovely. Now, the most interesting thing about this village... Oh, just missed a train, damn it. Giving it away there. Oops. Is that there's a steam train. Now, I'll try to catch up with it. There you go. Let's go back to the village. Yeah, so this village is on an old heritage line. At one point, this would have been a working line, which would have taken people into the city, but it would have got closed down in the 1960s and taken over by enthusiasts who now run it as a steam heritage railway. Now, as you can see, it's a lovely old school, old-fashioned village station. I know that the lines look a bit ridiculous with these electricity stanchions on them. But as I say, I'm using mostly vanilla rail and road assets, partly just to save on the load on the game to keep it playable. So I've just kind of have to put up with them. But I guess you could say that maybe this line has been modernised just in case I want to use it for modern services in the future. But anyway, yeah, so at the moment there's just a single train which goes between this village, this nice honey-coloured village, and another village called Old Parton Green, which we will zoom out, follow the line to, go through the woods, round this hill, and into the village of Old Parton Green. Try to get a good angle on this. There we go. So this village is a bit more what you might see in the kind of south of the UK, in rural areas. So we've got some like thatched cottages, like these two here, this one and this one, interspersed with some more kind of traditional Georgian buildings like this one, and even some older buildings like this one as well, which has a slate roof. So it's a real mingling mix of building types, but there are some really lovely English village assets available on the Steam Workshop. So, you know, all credit to the people who've created these assets. Brilliant stuff. So let's have a quick look around. I've got a couple of these kind of old, I would say, late medieval houses. And then an earlier medieval house here, this tiny little cottage, which is kind of stuck right there with its tiny little garden. Zoom out a bit further, have a look around here. It's a village church, just a standard village church really. Got a pond with some swans on it here, which is quite nice as well. And let's look around here. We'll find the station where the train service comes into. Now, I was struggling to find stations that really looked like you'd get in a village, apart from the one that I showed you in the other village, but I didn't want to use the same one twice. Oh, there's a train. Ah, nice one. So this is actually a university station that someone's made, which is it's a bit silly having it there, but I feel it kind of does the job. There goes a train on its way. There's a small rail yard here as well, where we've got like supplies such as wood and rails and coal and stuff, and of course a water tower for the train to use. And this would have been the old station master's cottage back in the day when it was running as a proper passenger line. Now, in my imagination, at least, this line would have carried on right across here, where my cursor's going now, and would have carried on here, But then they decided to build a new part of Parton Green, and so they demolished they took up the old line, and then when the enthusiasts took the line over as a heritage railway, then they built this tunnel, at great expense, I would imagine. But they built this tunnel to connect up the two parts of the line, so it could still run. As you can see, there's also a modern metro line into the town as well. So this is the modern part of Parton Green. It's a bit similar to the place that I showed you earlier. Oh, we've got another Argos there, a smaller one. Got a pub here, another pub here. So you can see British people like pubs. So I try to put in as many as possible. Now, I actually really like this vanilla metro station, elevated metro station asset, because it really looks like the elevated metro stations we have here in the Docklands in London. It's called the Docklands Light Railway, but some of the stations are really, really similar to this, so I kind of like this. And I'm also using DLR trains, so Docklands Light Railway trains on this route as well. So I'll see if I can show you. Now, let's follow that heritage line though, because this will take us into the city, to what used to be the original terminus of the city back in maybe Georgian times, so in like the 1840s or something along those lines. And you have this really lovely building. It's actually a Parisian building, but I think it works well here as well. And it's right next to the old theatre as well. So then that goes straight into a tunnel, and that comes out the other side of this hill. As you can see, people actually do use this heritage line. These people down here waiting for a train. Now, next to this station is an area which I really like, which I built recently. I must admit, this is plopped using Rico, so this hasn't been a growable one, but this area here is called Beckett Wood. Now, it's kind of similar to parts of East London, which is where I live. And I'll show you my kind of thinking behind it. So we have an area here of like really nice old houses from around the same era that I'm thinking that station was built. You still get these in some areas of London, like Islington, for example, and parts of Hackney, as well as other areas of London, but those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. And yeah, I feel these houses are really nice, really nicely detailed if you zoom in. And this is what the whole of Beckett Wood would have been like at one point. As you can see, these are tree-lined roads. Really nice stuff, lovely place to live. But during the war, a lot of this area would have been bombed. So it left a lot of spaces for new development. In the 60s and 50s, you would have got a load of kind of tower blocks built here. But in more recent times, those would have been demolished and regenerated. And you get these more modern kind of flats. So this is a really good model, I think. It's a bit brightly lit here, so I'll find one that's less brightly lit. Let's see. There's a good example over here. So let's go onto this road. There we go. Yeah, so these models are lovely and really realistic. I think they're based on some real buildings in London. As you can see, the Victoria pub actually did survive the bombing. That's really, really similar to a Victoria pub in Dalston. Maybe it's based on it, I don't know. And we've also got some new apartments here, which are really nice. And some other new builds, like this corner one here, for example, and this. Now, this model here was described by its creator as being boring, but I actually really like it. I think it's quite a nice example of modern architecture that you get in lots of cities these days. But yeah, this is my kind of area based on a regenerated part of East London. Well, as you can see on this line, we've got... Ooh, there it goes. Oh, missed it, damn. That was a tube train in the style that you get in London. Now, that was a new tube for London, which isn't going to come into service until 2024, I think, or 2025. But somebody's done a model for it, and it looks great. So I wanted to include that. Here's another new build estate. Oh yeah, I've shown you that one. And here's another one. Just people out in the garden, which is nice. Over here, you wouldn't necessarily find this in East London, to be honest, but I just like these kind of eco homes. They're just vanilla eco homes, but I just think they're nice models. They look good. They look modern and futuristic. And then we've got this roundabout here with a few tower blocks, modern tower blocks built on them. This one here really reminds me of a tower block I know well in London. Although it doesn't have the green bits on the real one, but yeah. And some taller new builds here as well. Now, as you can see, I've used the Colossal Order office here. The reason is it actually really reminds me of a real life building in East London, which is the Royal London Hospital in Whitechapel. Yeah, if you're familiar with that, you'll kind of get what I mean, especially from the ground. So if we go a bit lower onto the ground. Ooh, sorry, got sticky fingers. There we go. Kind of has that vibe of Royal London Hospital to it. So it fits in with my kind of East End theme for this area, as do these this brick viaduct here. Now, there's another tube train, by the way. Now, you could argue that it's pointless because it goes kind of from nowhere to nowhere, which is true. But I imagined when it was built, it linked maybe to industrial areas or something like that. So, or perhaps it had a different railway on it at that time. There's the new train for London. If it goes. So, yeah, this is the regenerated, but still with some old bits, part of the East End. Oh yes, this building here. So this building is from New York. But there's actually a very, very similar building to that in East London as well. So I thought, actually, this fits in quite well with this theme. So, yeah. So then, I'm just going to follow the tube line from Beckett Wood down to the main tube hub in the centre of the city, which is not that far away, just here. Now, although again, this is a vanilla building, I think it's a really good building. And the reason I like it so much is because it reminds me of a real life building in London, again in East London, in a place called Canning Town, where you have the tube line below, and then above it you have the DLR, so that's the Docklands Light Railway, which is this one here. It really reminds me of that, so it's great. Although the real life Canning Town actually has the two lines stacked, so it has a light rail line directly above the tube line, which is even cooler actually. But still, this is pretty close and pretty good. Now then, let's see, what should we do next? Let's have a look at the central area, seeing as we're here. Just before we leave this though, I just do want to say that I'd like to give the Metro Overhaul mod a go at some point. I've never used that one before, and I think it looks really good, so I'd like to give that a go, and I hope it doesn't slow down the game too much. Hopefully it won't. But let's have a look at the central area then. Now, as you can see, this area which the Metro hub is in is a financial district using all the new financial buildings. Now, I have to say, although I quite like the shape of some of these, particularly this one and this one, overall I'm pretty disappointed with the models. They're all a bit samey, especially like the windows, which are really like, just look really flat. There's nothing going on. So they're okay, don't get me wrong. But yeah, and I really hate the style of the stock market. I just think it's really like silly and unrealistic. So I tried to surround it with some much better skyscrapers to hide it. So from this angle, for example, you can hardly see it. Okay, let's see, what should we look at next? Yes, so next to the financial district, we have a kind of really upscale living and office district. This one here, this is called King Charles Square. It's got a helicopter port, and this takes people by helicopter from the cruise line harbour. As you can see, there's loads of helicopters stacked up waiting to land. It's a really popular service. These always go full. See, there's people waiting down here. There's always a crowd of people waiting at both ends. Oh yeah, we've got a nice little construction site down here. This is early days of construction, just preparing the ground, clearing all the rubble and so on. I've got another construction site with cranes and so on, which looks a bit more interesting than that. That's just groundworks. As you can see, I haven't finished this area yet. There's loads of plots still available to build on. So I'm going to fill this up at some point, and likewise in the financial district as well. There are loads of plots to fill down here and around here. So I did say at the start it's a work in motion, work in progress rather. Yeah, let's talk about the main station. So this is close to the metro hub, but this model is great. So this is based by a building designed by the architect Santiago Calatrava. It's just a fantastic building, and he designs some just amazing stuff really. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. Let's have a look at the inside. It's got this incredible arch. So this is based on a real building. I've written down where the building is, so bear with me a sec. Oh, it's in Liège in Belgium. And this brilliant model is by Nikki Ayz. This is the modular version, so I put down the number of tracks I thought I would need at the start of when I started building the city. But actually I really regret not having put down more tracks now, because I've kind of run out of space. But there we go. You live and learn. Now then, if we just hop across to the other side of the station. So this is the main entrance really, where people come and catch trams from. There's a tram approaching, as you can see. This is a tram only road which goes past the big avenue. Let's look at the big avenue though. So we saw that Adidas store earlier. Here are some other stores which I think are just amazing really. So there's a Louis Vuitton store, so detailed. We've got a Nike store over here as well. I mean, just look at that, it's really cool. Really detailed, kind of lovely 3D effect there. Got another Louis Vuitton. We've got a Puma store here. That's lovely as well. A Givenchy, a Gucci, a Prada. Like, these are super high-end stores along this avenue. This is the main avenue of the city. And then we've got some tech offices here. Whoops, guess I've gone away a bit. There we go. Zoom out a bit. And see these red buses down here? So these are new route masters. You'll see, if you ever come to London, you'll see these running around. 38, one of the most popular routes. They're not the most detailed model, but I really like the model. I think the shape is perfect. It looks good. So, yeah, just to say about these shops. So these are designed by, written this down, Stringer Bell. And I think they're brilliant, so thank you very much to Stringer Bell. He's done loads of them as well. There's a Leica store, Lexus, Hublot, Lego, of course. And they're animated as well. Some of them are anyway, and they just look great, especially at night. They look so good. So this is a kind of, the central part of my city. We've got now, because I've only used vanilla rails, some of the rail stuff isn't super realistic, but I've tried to do the best I can with what I've got. I really like this freight model, which we saw at the old dockside earlier, but it works well in the city as well. So this is the main sort of central hub for a city. This looks good at night because I put some lights in and it looks pretty cool. So what else have we got to look at around here? Oh yeah, it's probably just worth looking at the big gyratory. So a gyratory is like a giant roundabout. As you can see, it's very well used. They don't always stick to roundabout rules, which is annoying, but yeah, generally speaking, it works well. And one of the main roads off there is a tunnel that goes underneath the city centre for people who want to get across the city centre quickly. And over here we have a big motorway which goes up to out of town. Now, you might be wondering what this area here is, this big park. Now, this is a nature reserve which runs as a ring right around the city centre. So hopefully you can see that. So it kind of starts here. It goes around here, around these buildings, cuts through these tall buildings here. So people can cross over on this bridge, which is quite sweet, between the buildings. And there's lots of side gates for this as well, by the way. And then it continues. Again, it crosses over the big motorway, continues around here, crosses this avenue, goes through this part, and then it goes through this wooded area, and it ends up at the Opera House, which I'll show you. Now, I actually quite like this old school Opera House asset. I think it looks quite nice at night when it's properly lit up. And I'm going to show you a few shots at night in a little bit. So I'll show you a bit of the Opera House then. Now, we're kind of done by the shoreline here. So let's have a look at some of the shoreline towns I've built. Now this one here is called Eastend Beach. And this is based on a typical British seaside town, similar to Brighton or Southend-on-Sea, particularly Brighton actually. It's also got its own fun fair, which is just, basically the amusement park. But I think some of the assets on this are actually lovely. So I'm quite happy to use it. So let's have a look at this town. So I love that somebody's modelled these seaside style houses. It's a kind of place that you get up and down the coast of the United Kingdom, really. This one's got a nice beach, although people have parked on it, which is a bit cheeky. And I don't know how they got down there, to be honest, but still. Let's have a look at these. So this is a row of shops that you would find in a typical English seaside town. Let's have a closer look. You've got a greengrocer, metro market, butchers, takeaway. Go down here. Got a post office, a KFC, a bargain booze. Although these buildings aren't super detailed, they are really nice, really nicely done. Then if we kind of look at the town, you can see a lot of them are painted in different pastel colours, which is something you'll find a lot in English seaside towns. So it's really well thought out. And much like Brighton, this town is on a slope which goes up to the main station. In this case, the main station is a metro station, not a proper train station. But this view here actually reminds me of when you walk down the hill from the station at Brighton, albeit the walk from the station at Brighton is a lot longer than that. We've got some pubs as well, as you'd expect to see at the seaside. Now, I've used a Space Needle here, which seems a bit silly and incongruous, but there's a kind of an attraction in Brighton, which is a tall building, not totally dissimilar to a Space Needle, but a lot smaller, obviously. So I kind of used it as a tribute to that, really. Oh, there's a UK ambulance, UK style ambulance going somewhere. Where is it? Oh, there it is. It's based on a Mercedes Sprinter, I think. So yeah, this is the English seaside resort. Now for something completely different, let's fly over to one of the Miami style resorts which I've done, which is Georgetown Beach. Here it is. Now in order to stop this beach from flooding constantly, I had to put these rocks in to try to divert the water flow away from them. Like I tried extending the land out, but it kind of ruined it kind of ruined the water flow elsewhere, so I just used rocks in the end. Which I know it looks a bit daft, but... So this is the kind of Miami style resort. It's got a casino, it's got all these hotels. These are just the vanilla hotels, but actually I think they're pretty decent, these models. Some of the best vanilla models in the game, I think. Oh yeah, we've got Club Alpha down here, which I think is really nice. Overlooking the beach. Now you can actually grow palm trees in the UK, in southern UK, and maybe in northern UK, I don't know. But they wouldn't grow this big, really, to be honest. They'd probably be like 1 metre tall. But this is a thriving little town. And I love some of these kind of Art Deco-y style buildings that people have made. Just lovely. Especially these. Right, I hope you liked that. Now, before moving on to some final bits before we wrap up this video, I'll just show you there's a little water park down here, which is right next to the big wheel, which is modelled on the London Eye. So I think this would be a cool place to visit. Now, so if we just go a bit further down from this area, then we get to this bridge. Now I think this bridge is really cool, this model, but I've created it in a way which I think wouldn't work physically or wouldn't be a good idea at least, by overlapping these wires. But I just feel it looks pretty cool, so whatever. Then we've got a stadium here and this junction. Now, this is nowhere near up to the standard of the people who create these like super clever professional junctions, but I had a bit of fun making it. And it seems to work in that people get to where they want to go. It reminds me a bit of the Spaghetti Junction in Birmingham in the UK. Not quite as complicated as that, but still not far off. Across the dam here, we've got this Elizabethan manor house. Now this is a really lovely building. As you can see, it's very popular with tourists as well. But in my head, I actually live in this house, so this is my house that I come to visit. I mean, look at the view. You've got the castle over there. You've got the stadium over there. The bridge. The city in the background. I mean, just look at the detail on this model. It's really nice. It's also got its own tennis courts, obviously, over here. It's just in a really, really lovely location, as you can see. What else is there to talk about I haven't mentioned? Oh yeah, there's this town a bit further down over here. This is another Miami-style resort, so if we zoom across there, past all the fishing bits and bobs. I mean, this is even more far-fetched that you'd ever see in the UK. You would never see something like this on the coast of the UK, unfortunately. But, it's fun to make these kind of places. And this grew organically, but then I just changed a couple of the buildings where they built like 4 of the same thing side by side, just to mix it up a bit. So I say what this one's called. It's called Fairlight Cove. Fairlight is a place on the south coast of England. Nothing like this. It's just a small village, but I like the idea of calling it after that. One thing I do like about this is it was just fun putting in this winding road down to the town from the highway. So although it looks a bit jaggedy, I kind of feel like this is what it would look like in real life if it was built in Britain, this road. They would just like carve into the hillside. And we have a lot of chalk ground in Britain, so the cliff would look a bit like that. So that's Fairlight Cove. Let's have a look at it from sky. With a big fish factory at the top of the hill. Now, let's have a look at the wider region. So as you can see, there is loads and loads of land I haven't built on yet. Loads of it. So this city could be huge eventually. It's around 133,000 currently. But I'm going to continue working on it because I'm having a lot of fun with it. Really enjoying it. One last thing actually. So you see this long straight avenue here. Now I call this area Raillands. The reason is, when I got the original map, who was the original map by? I can't remember. I'll have to look it up and put it in the credits. But it had these rail lines, these parallel rail lines kind of running into the centre, which I kept. And I thought, I'm not sure what to do with the land in between these rail lines. And I thought I'd just build this big avenue. And it's got trams running all the way down it. I love this tram road, by the way, where it's got the trams and then like a central couple of driving lanes and then some outer local driving lanes as well as parking. Whoa, there's an ambulance. So I built this avenue, and I just put some zones on it, some residential zones to grow organically, and I didn't expect it to grow so kind of swanky and bougie as it is. So it's so grand. I mean, it's kind of unrealistic for a British city. It looks more like New York, but yeah, it just grew really well, and they seem to love being in between the rail lines, as you can see. I'll call this road Railway, 2 separate words, Railway. It's a bit shit, but there you go. There we are. Actually, you know what? It might be interesting to see this map before anything was built on it, so you can get a feel for the area. The map's called Vanilla Lake. I've just looked it up. It's by Mr. Miyagi. So there you go. Let's switch to that, and then I'll say goodbye. And thank you if you've watched all the way through. Thank you so much for sticking with it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Oh, actually, just before we go, I just want to show this estate here. So these are kind of modern UK detached houses, with a few 30s style ones thrown in, which are becoming increasingly popular at the moment. They're actually building new style 30s ones. New 30s style ones, I should say. And this fantastic crematorium over here, it's brilliant. And it's just like a lovely model, this one. So a massive thank you to all the creators. Hope you've enjoyed this tour. I'll just show you the map without anything on it. And yeah, if this is popular in any way, then I'll do another one of the city a bit more developed. So thank you and goodbye.